You don't ask for help, not because you don't need it. You do. You feel the weight of everything you're holding, the exhaustion you keep pushing through, the water rising around you that you keep telling yourself you can manage just a little longer. But you don't ask. You figure it out alone. You stay quiet when someone offers. You say, "I'm fine," before you've even finished deciding whether you are. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a voice that says, "You handle things yourself. That's who you are." But here's what that voice never tells you. It didn't choose that. It was trained. The people around you probably see it as strength, self-sufficiency, an almost admirable stubbornness that gets things done without anyone's help. And maybe part of you has believed that too, but you've felt the other side of it, the way your jaw tightens when someone tries to step in. The flash of something close to panic when a situation demands that you lean on another person. The strange, quiet shame of needing anything at all, as if needing something means something terrible about who you are. You're not difficult. You're not broken. You're not like this for no reason. Psychology has traced this exact pattern to a very specific place, and the explanation doesn't start with your personality. It starts with what happened to you before you were old enough to call it a lesson. Psychologists call it hyper-independence, and while the word makes it sound like a character trait, something baked into who you are, it is, at its root, a trauma response. Dr. Gabor Mate, one of the most widely cited researchers on the relationship between childhood experience and adult behavior, describes hyperindependence not as strength, but as a nervous system decision. The brain, particularly under conditions of chronic stress or unmet need, makes a calculation. Connection is unreliable. Depending on others is dangerous. The only safe option is to become someone who doesn't need anything from anyone. That is not a philosophy you chose. It is a conclusion your nervous system reached, probably long before you had words for it. And the reason it feels so much like identity, so much like you, is because it was installed early. When patterns form in childhood, they don't stay as strategies. They become the self. You stop experiencing it as something I do to protect myself and start experiencing it as who I am. This is the mechanism, not weakness, not stubbornness. A nervous system that learned, correctly at the time, that the safest version of you was the version who never needed anything from anyone else. Think about a younger version of yourself. Maybe you were small and something was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, maybe. Not the kind of childhood that gets talked about openly. Maybe it was quieter than that. Maybe the adults around you were present physically, but not emotionally. Maybe you learned early that your needs made things harder. That asking for something meant conflict or disappointment or a kind of cold withdrawal that was somehow worse than just not asking in the first place. Or maybe you did ask. You reached out. You said in the ways a child says things, with crying, with clinging, with desperate attempts to be noticed. I need something. And what came back was not comfort. It was distance, irritation, absence, or nothing at all. And you, being a child with a developing mind that was doing everything it could to make sense of the world, reached a conclusion. I am too much. My needs are a burden. If I need things, I push people away. The safe version of me is the one who doesn't need. So you became that person. You became extraordinarily capable. You learned to solve your own problems before anyone else had to know about them. You learned to sit with pain quietly until it passed, or until you'd processed it so completely alone that by the time anyone asked how you were, there was nothing left to say. You learned that other people's needs mattered, and yours could wait, could always wait. And here is the part that matters most. That adaptation was intelligent. In the environment you were in, it was the right call. You assessed the resources available to you, found them unreliable, and built a version of yourself that didn't depend on them. The child who did that was not damaged. They were doing exactly what a mind is supposed to do. They were surviving. But survival strategies don't expire automatically when the danger does. You are not that child anymore. The environment has changed. There are likely people in your life now who genuinely want to help, who would show up if you let them, who would not find your needs to be a burden. And yet the alarm still sounds, the refusal still rises. You still say, "I'm fine," before you finished checking. You still carry things alone until you're so exhausted you can barely stand, and even then, you look for a way to manage without asking. The cost of that is real. It's the relationships that never get fully close, because closeness requires letting someone help you, and you've never quite been able to. It's the burnout that arrives not because of what life asked of you, but because of what you refused to let others share. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people who would hold some of the weight and not being able to hand any of it over, not because you don't trust them, but because something older than trust is still running the show. Here is what I want you to sit with. The part of you that cannot accept help. The part that goes rigid when someone offers, that feels like a failure for needing, that has quietly and exhaustedly carried everything alone for longer than you can remember. That part of you was not a mistake. It was a solution. A real, intelligent, functional solution to a real problem you faced when you didn't have any other options. It kept you safe when safety wasn't guaranteed. It made you capable when you had to be. It gave you a kind of resilience that most people, if they're being honest, have never been tested for. You were not broken. You were adapting. The problem is not that you built that wall. The problem is that the wall doesn't know the war is over. And that's not a character flaw you need to overcome through sheer willpower. That is a nervous system pattern that was written in survival mode. One that can, slowly, with the right conditions, begin to learn something new. Not that asking for help is easy, but that it might be safe. That needing something doesn't make you a burden. That the people who stay when you finally show them your weight are the evidence that your nervous system never got to see. You don't have to dismantle it all today. You just need to know what it is, because understanding it, naming it, seeing exactly where it came from, is not a small thing. For a lot of people, it is the first real breath they've taken in years. You have probably spent a long time being proud of how little you need, and some of that pride is earned. The capability is real, the resilience is real, but I hope today you can hold a little space for the version of you who is tired, who has been carrying things alone for so long they've forgotten what it feels like to put something down, who learned, in the most understandable way possible, that needing help was dangerous, and has been quietly paying the cost of that lesson every single day since. You weren't built this way, you were shaped this way, and knowing the difference is the beginning of something. If this video put words to something you've been carrying for a long time, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you want to keep going deeper into these patterns, the next video is right here.